Welcome everyone to the final game of the Freestyle Chess 2025. Magnus Carlsen is in big trouble right now. He needs to win on demand with the white pieces, and Magnus in such situations is an absolute beast. Will Levon be able to hold him? Because a draw is enough for Levon Aronian, who won his first game, and there he enters in a handshake. Let's have a look at the freestyle chess position. We have a rook in the corner, a king, bishop, queen, knight, rook, knight, and bishop. So this actually makes the game quite interesting. Players have a handshake, and Magnus is thinking for his first move. The best move here could very well be a4. Just pushing that a pawn down the board. But Magnus starts with f4, a logical move, activating his rook, making square for his knights to come in. Levon responds with d5. The queen is supporting it, the bishop opens up. Already black has a nice position out of the opening. g3 played to attack on the long diagonal here. And now pawn to g6, the bishop also opens up on this diagonal. e4 played to attack here, the pawn on e4, pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, taken, and Levon brings his knight out to f6, hitting the bishop. The bishop needs to drop back now. And he plays it, bishop to g2. So already we have an imbalance on the board, which is good news for Magnus. But I love Levon's next move, c5. What a move this is. He takes control of the d4 square, makes a square for his queen. Knight can come to d6, bishop f5. Oof. What a multi-purpose move. I mean, it's just a move that coordinates everything. Knight comes to d3, attacking the pawn on c5. And now Levon can push the pawn forward, but that would mean that the white knight goes to e5. And so he just calmly plays his queen to c7, defending the pawn here. Magnus brings his other knight out. And Levon now brings his knight out as well. Knight to d6. Notice, if you can get this bishop out, then you can short castle here. The king can make a long jump to g8. The queen comes up to e2. Magnus activates the queen here, and now black can bring the bishop out to e6, maybe even to f5. Not a bad idea, but b6 just shows what great form Levon is in. He's not afraid of any threats on this diagonal, and he's ready to put his bishop on b7. Magnus brings his knight to e5. He's looking at the c6 square, the d7 squares, maybe even the f7 square, but bishop to b7 just takes care of everything. He puts his bishop there. And Levon is doing quite well now. Very well, in fact. Takes. And you take with the queen. And now pawn to b3. To put the bishop here on b2. But can we jump with our king to g8? That would be a long jump for a short castle. And he does it. He just puts the king to g8. Lovely. It's now kind of opposite side castling. Bishop goes to b2. Magnus presses the clock. Magnus is keeping a good time situation. In the last game, he had really fallen down on the clock. Rook c8 played with the idea of b5 c4. Very interesting. Magnus goes knight to f2. And for sure, Magnus is feeling the heat here, because the moves that Levon is making are so powerful. At the same time, they're so elegant and simple. Pawn to b5 with the idea of c4 coming in. He goes queen to f3, offering a trade of queens. Takes, knight takes, and pawn to c4, actively playing here. But on the other hand, you can already sort of sense that Magnus has some possibilities attached with the rook coming to e1, putting pressure on e7, and he plays it. Rook to e1. Levon can play rook e8, rook c7. Both moves look pretty fine, but he jumps in, knight to d5. He defends the pawn on e7, also opens up the bishops to be traded here on h8 and b2. And Magnus takes on h8. And he plays king takes h8. Levon wiping his glasses there, just showing the confidence to Magnus that he is doing well. 11 minutes to Magnus. He plays his king to b2. And there is a possibility to simply play c3 takes, rook takes, attacking the knight here. But Levon goes rook c7. Very calm move. And Magnus brings his knight to d4. A useful move, putting pressure on b5. Rook to c8, played by Levon. The rooks are doubled down the c file. And although there is no real threat as the c2 point is guarded, knight comes to e4. Now if you take, I take here, and then the b5 pawn would be hanging. He does take it. Rook e4 by Magnus and a6 played to defend this structure. And Magnus can now go c3. It's a useful move, a good move, but Magnus plays rook to c1. Slightly passive, but guys, c3 takes, knight c3 should be a good idea again. But Levon doesn't go for it. He plays his pawn to e6. And now can Magnus start putting some pressure here? He goes knight to f3, again allowing this move c3. I mean, white can at any point push his pawn to c3. King comes up to g7. Pawn takes pawn, and now you can take with the rook. You can also take it with the pawn here, but rook takes makes sense. You're trading. Now the only problem here for Magnus is that he has an isolated pawn, but he also now has a majority from which he can create a passer. So first c3, so that if d3, the rook will not settle down on c3, and then you slowly break open the queen side with d3 and c4. So is Levon falling under pressure here? Is Magnus going to weave his magic like he always does in the endgame? And first he brings his rook to e1. And see the confidence with which Magnus is playing. But one thing is for certain. This 10 extra minutes that Levon has is very special. King to f6 played. And now white plays his knight to e5. Rook comes to c7. And now threatening to trade off the knights with knight c4 check. So king comes up to b3. Levon goes king e7. So calmly playing here. And d3 played to prepare the move c4 in the position. He goes f6. The knight comes back to f3. And the idea is to put the knight on d4 to attack the e6 pawn. And knight to a4. He's coming in quickly to attack the c3 point. Magnus pushes the pawn. Levon gives a check. King has to come to c3 to defend the d3 pawn. But now can we give another check? He does it. He gives a check. And he's asking Magnus, draw? That's impossible. If Magnus draws, he's lost the finals. So he has to play for a win. King b3, knight comes back, and now king c2. And now pawn takes pawn taken here. Pawn takes pawn by Magnus. How easy is it to hold this endgame? Maybe it is easy against others. But against Magnus, it's very difficult. And look at what Levon's doing. He wants to come to d6 and attack this pawn. King comes up to c3. And Levon brings his knight to d6. Magnus brings his knight back. Pawn to h6 to create play on the king side with g5. But I love the move Magnus has played. He's now looking to enter in via b6. And Levon goes knight to b5 check. King b4 comes back. Knight to d6. And we have rook to b3. Ooh, what a calm move. Threatening rook a3. The a6 pawn is under pressure. And now g5. A fantastic move, hitting this structure. Goes rook a3. Again attacking a6. Magnus putting some lot of pressure here on Levon. But again, look at Levon's clock. 9 minutes 47 seconds. Magnus down to 2 minutes. c5 played. Attacking the knight. And Levon goes knight to b5. The rook now swings over to f3. a4 is an idea. Also fg could become possible. He takes on f4. And Magnus now takes back with the pawn. Also opening up the ideas of rook h3 to attack the h6 pawn. He goes knight to d4, attacking the rook. The rook now has to move sideways. Rook to h3 played. And e5 pushed. And if you take on h6, I have e takes f4 with this passer. So Magnus has to take, but Levon's defense has been so impeccable. So good. And now king to c4. Levon brings his rook to g6. And his plan is to enter in via g2. What does Magnus do here? He brings his king into d5. Is this going to be one of those brilliant endgame grinds by Magnus Carlsen? That's the big question. He's playing it very carefully. Knight to e6. What a move by Levon. You can't take on e5. c5 is hanging. So he goes rook g3, offering a trade of rooks. Can't take the rooks because then white is dominating with this passer and also the active king. So Magnus is forced to find the best move with knight c7, a very good move. He takes on e5 check with the rook. And now the king has to move. Levon is playing such incredible chess here. Rook to e2 is what is a good move. He goes check, king goes back, and maybe now get the 7th heaven. 7th rank, rook f2 finds it. Rook to f2, attacking the knight, the pawn on a2. Just amazing. He goes for a check. King comes back to d8. And now Magnus looking for that final trick that will help him beat Levon here, because a draw is not enough for him. He goes up, king e7. And Magnus now, how does he coordinate his knight, rook and king? Check, another check goes back. He plays knight to b3. And now both the pawns are hanging on a2 and h2. Levon takes on h2. Pawn to c6 played. And now can we snatch another pawn on the other side? No, he gives a check. Very important check, and notice how knight e6 can actually win the rook. So be careful on which square you go to. King d3. He gives another check. Levon Aronian playing this so well. King d2. And now maybe another check possible. But he goes knight e6. He attacks the rook. The rook on g7 is hanging. He goes rook to d7 check. King c8 played. And now rook attacks the knight. Levon is getting so close to a draw. He comes back, knight to d8, attacking the pawn on c6. And Magnus must move the pawn. He goes c7, knight c6, rook h7. And Levon goes rook to h5, stopping this knight from coming, and also later on he can come back and win the pawn. The position is equal and drawn. Magnus offers a draw. Levon accepts it. He's the champion of the freestyle tournament in Las Vegas. And look at that joy on his face. Amazing work by Levon Aronian.